Hello, hey there. Hi, everybody. It's your girl, Stephanie, and welcome. Welcome back for some, and welcome to some of my new viewers. You are here with me today for the second episode of the A2H podcast. So, thank you all for joining me, and welcome to the show. This is the Element A2H podcast, where we break down the element A2H. This is, as I said, episode 2, and we are going to be talking about the A2H formula. The title for today's show is called A2H Formula Explained. So, thank you for being here. And let me get into it really quickly before I get any further. I am joined by a special guest today. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my guest, Miss Tamika Otis. Please, y'all, say hello to my sister friend, Tamika. Hi, Mika.
Hello.
Yay. I'm the studio audience and the host, by the way. Hey, Mika, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So it's going to be really interesting for me to sort of switch between host and friend. I'm so used to calling my host, my guest, Mika, but to be a lot more formal, please welcome Miss Tamika Otis to the show. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you again for having me.
Of course, I would like to just tell the people really, really quickly a few words to describe Tamika Otis. Some of the words that I have found to describe Tamika are equity warrior, results driven leader, a businesswoman, a loving mother, sister, and friend. And last but not least, and why I thought it was an excellent idea to have her here today, Tamika has been described as an atmosphere shifting storyteller. But most importantly, I think for me anyway, Tamika is my sister friend. So please help me welcome my sister friend Tamika to the show. Tamika, thank you so much for joining us today to talk not just about the elements A2H, but to also talk about your story. So before we get into your story, I need to sort of tell the people, and maybe for your benefit a little bit too, the ways in which I describe A2H and the A2H formula. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. So for everybody's knowledge, today's episode is called the A2H Formula Explained. So let me just break it down for you really quickly. The elements A2H are the framework by which I help people to define and create their own success through my company, Aspire to Hire. We use a formula called the A2H formula. And that formula is that if people embody and utilize the elements A2H as an internal compass, and with that internal compass, with the elements A2H, coupled with their contribution to society, to their job, to the world, that will then lead them to career resiliency. So let me say that one more time. The elements A2H plus your contribution will lead to career resiliency. So that is, in a nutshell, and really simplified, the A2H formula. So today I have my friend Tamika Otis on to talk a little bit about what that looks like in her world. Some of the ways that I feel like I've seen Tamika embody the elements of success are through her leadership qualities, obviously, through her entrepreneurship, and through her career journey. So we're going to spend some time today talking about Miss Tamika's career journey. And so as I get into that, Tamika, the first thing I want to ask you about is I know that you let me know previously that some of the elements of success that resonated with you were passion and unapologetic ambition. So tell us a little bit about why those two stand
Well,
out.
it wasn't until very, very recently that I publicly acknowledged that I did not finish my college degree
Right.
because I was very embarrassed by that. I
Gotcha.
attached that to shame, and
Mm,
I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome.
mm,
Not because I wasn't excellent at everything I was doing and excelling
right.
and holding high positions, but because, especially in our community, the Black community, how many degrees you have is like really important, and it's part
Mm,
of what identifies you. And so I
right.
would often be in conversations where it would shift to not just like, do you have a degree? It's like, what degree do you have and where'd you get it from? And
Right.
I'm like, Sally's calling me, excuse me, or I have to use the restroom just to avoid
Mm,
the question. And,
mm,
and it was so awkward. But what I realized, with the help of some, friends and people pouring into me, was that that wasn't anything to attach to shame. It was honestly like something to say, like, yeah, I don't have my degree, and I have
right.
people PhDs paying me to give them advice. So
Now
that's
that's a word.
right. But because I didn't have that piece of paper walking in the door, right?
Right.
I had to have passion. I learned that
Yes.
really, really early on, that anything I was passionate about, I was very, very good at. I
Mm,
didn't care about not doing things that weren't in my job description. I wanted the
mm,
job done. I wanted it done well. And
right.
so again, anything I was passionate about, I was excelling. I was coming in at entry level and moving up to management within 1 to 3 years in several different positions.
Gotcha.
And then the unapologetic ambition was
Mm-hmm.
like the audacity of me to even be applying for some of
Yes.
the positions that I applied for, not having a degree, and maybe at the time not having the experience they had. But first and foremost, I'm a child of God.
Okay.
I believe in his favor over my life. And I believe
Yes.
that when I hear a whisper from him, that
Mm,
it's already laid out for me. So
yes.
positions where people are like, girl, what are you doing? And I would get them. And not only
Mm,
get them, but hold them for, I was a director for the Department of Labor for 10 years,
wow.
holding board positions. And again, now starting my consulting company where people who have
Yes.
multiple degrees or even PhDs are paying me to give
Yes.
them advice. So in my career, because my trajectory was different, I don't have that
Mm-hmm.
degree behind me. I had to be
Right.
super passionate, and I had to have unapologetic ambition.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Tamika, for sharing that. It is of the utmost importance for me, for people, to hear that story. And
Right.
especially because you, as you know, my experience, my career was really built in higher education.
Right.
So sometimes I have to put a little bit more effort into welcoming others, right? Um, because people tend to be, in some cases, intimidated by the fact that I'm a higher ed administrator, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm.
honestly, in my eyes, I'm like, it's the same type of job that anybody else has. It's just work. So
Right.
I really am happy that you were willing and open enough to come on the show today and share that part of your story. It is just one part of your story, though. Your story is so wide and vast and blessed,
Mhm,
and marvelous, right? At least in my eyes.
mhm.
So it's just one part of your story. But to your point, I think in our society, we give so much power in some ways to these degrees.
Mhm.
And I think, obviously, what I've built Aspire to Hire upon is that your definition of success should really be an internal
Yes.
decision. And so that is really the basis of the Aspire to Hire movement. People who are working, utilizing personal characteristics, their personal and their professional development to define success for themselves. And I thought
Yeah.
you were an excellent person to tell that story to my viewers, to my audience, and to our followers. So thank you for sharing that piece.
Yes.
I wanted to also ask you, um, I think in that same vein, at what times in your life, or maybe in what ways, do you feel like you have done well at defining your own success?
Who? there were so many times where people told me I couldn't do something.
Right.
Or I remember when I started out at the Department of Labor in the Job Corps program as an admissions counselor. I went in
Mm,
and applied to be an admissions assistant, and the person who interviewed me saw something bigger in me and said, "You're not an admissions assistant. You're a counselor." And I had no experience, and I
awesome.
jumped in and excelled. You know, I excelled in that position.
Right.
But I remember when I vied for the directorship once my director left,
Okay.
that somebody from the Department of Labor called me, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like basically telling me, "You don't get to make mistakes. Like you, in a nutshell, on paper, you shouldn't even have this position. So I am
Mm.
expecting 100% this." And like I'm dealing with 16 to 24-year-olds. Nothing is for sure, right?
Okay. Right.
But and so there were moments where I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I was like, no, no, because that would be disrespectful to God's favor over my life. I'm only
Mm.
here
Mm.
because He said I should be here. So
Yes.
I don't have to prove anything with my words. Watch my work. So
Oh, yes.
that was my thing. I don't, and I come against it a lot. Even now, some people are like, oh, you didn't finish your degree. No. You think you can
Right.
handle this? Yes. And then they
Absolutely.
see what I do, and they're like, oh, then nobody's talking about a degree anymore. So there were certain positions in my life where, again, on paper, I shouldn't have been in that position,
Right.
where people were challenging me. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to let what they say be what I am. I'm going
Right.
to show them that I'm supposed to be here through my work and my outcomes.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that example. You actually said something that I sort of say to myself often. You know how every now, sometimes people have like personal mantras, and watch me work is one of mine, right? It's like something that I play in my head even when I'm at work, because sometimes you come up against a work situation, a moment in which you feel stress, or you let that imposter syndrome sort of seep in, and I have to say to myself, watch me work. I'm gonna get this done.
Yep,
I'm gonna not just get it done, but I'm going to excel.
that's right.
So, Tamika, I just want to say, this part of you is exactly why I reached out to have you be on the podcast. A lot of people don't realize that they are already embodying the elements A2H, right? Because it's a new concept to people. It's something I'm introducing. But the concepts themselves, the elements themselves, are not new characteristics, right?
Right.
People already have them. And so I think it's important for me to demonstrate and really amplify other people's stories, not just my own, right?
Agreed.
To demonstrate for other people, look, sis over there is embodying. She is killing the elements of success. She is the elements A2H,
Mhm.
and so I really wanted to have you come on and talk about how you came to, I think, develop that kind of confidence in yourself. You already touched on it a little bit, of course, with your faith. But was there any sort of flashpoint in your career where you said to yourself, self, you know that you are better than this. So what's next for you? Did you feel like you had one particular flashpoint that you could draw from?
Ooh, I would say at the end of my tenure with Job Corps, I was there for
Mm,
13 years total. And it just got to the point where the policies put in place, I didn't have the influence that I needed to have to do for the people I was charged to serve what they needed me to do for them. And
okay.
it was very frustrating. My voice was stifled, and I decided, no,
Mm,
there's something more. I gave this program everything I had for
gotcha.
14 years. I left nothing on the table. And I decided that I could try for more and go into uncharted territory. So I shifted
Right.
from being in workforce development for 13 years, was really good at it,
Mm-hmm.
knew it like the back of my hand, to economic development, where
Mm,
I've been a serial entrepreneur, all my life, but that's different than going into economic development. Um,
yes.
and there were absolutely moments where I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I could, but then I just was like, you know what? But when you do this, for me, you know what? It's always about the people.
Right.
I've always been in like mission grounded positions in some shape or form. And
Right.
so those moments where I'm like, I don't think I can do this, I think about the people who need me,
Great.
who need my voice specifically, because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a woman of color.
Right.
I'm a divorced now single mother of two. I've been through a lot. I came from a home with divorced parents.
Right.
I just have so many stories that I can share, and so many areas where I can be more than sympathetic, but be empathetic, because
Right.
share their experience. That who am I to not be present for other people because I'm scared of something when God positioned me in that
Mm,
area? Uh,
right.
yeah,
Wow, that's powerful. That was a lot. There were a lot of gems I think dropped there. First of all, just recognizing that it was a flashpoint for you to
mhm,
say, I think it's time for me to step into something new, right? And then recognizing it's one thing to understand money and entrepreneurship myself. It's another thing to be charged with economic development for others,
yeah,
and especially community economic development in the
yes,
ways that I know that you have been charged to do. So I commend you for even recognizing those things in your career trajectory,
mhm,
because that's important. And one of the elements of success, I always have to bring it back.
yeah,
One of the other elements of success is also self-awareness, and for
yeah,
me it's actually the most, if I had to put them in order of priority, self-awareness is the top priority. It's the top element of success in the whole framework, because without actually being centered enough to recognize when it's time for you to go, or to recognize what your strengths are and when they're being tapped or not being tapped,
yes,
um, you're not going to be able to. Well, I shouldn't say you're not going to be able to. It might take you a little longer
yeah,
to make those decisions, or you
yeah,
may need to have the influence of other people to
yeah,
help you make those decisions. And of course, as I mentioned before, the elements A2H are all about having that as an internal driver, your sort of internal clock to say, it's time for me to do something else.
yeah,
It's time for me to stretch.
mm,
And it's, of course, if the Lord is saying, I want to place you somewhere else, you also have to show up. And then when you get there, you got to show out.
that's
So,
for sure.
absolutely. Okay. So, it's time for me to make a quick transition. What I would
Okay.
like for us to do next, Tamika, is to talk a little bit together about the A2H formula. So
Hmm.
I described it at the top of the show as
Hmm.
having the elements A2H, and then with that, focus on your own contribution to your work world, and to your community, so that you can eventually have career resilience. But I also like to take it a step further and help people realize that you can have career satisfaction that you
Yeah.
define for yourself. So, what I'm going to do is we're going to take a quick break. It's only going to be a 1 minute break. And when we
Hmm.
return, Tamika and I will dive into a discussion about what does the A2H formula look like for her. And not only that, but I'm going to ask Tamika to give her opinion about that combination of things, the elements A2H, and how contribution can be a driver for success. So we shall return in just a few. All right, everybody, welcome back. And as you just saw a quick little promo talking about how the elements A2H can really help you elevate your leadership. And so, with that, I want to transition to talk with you, Tamika, about the formula, the A2H formula, and really talk it out, really from a layperson's perspective, if you will. And I say layperson because you're not a person who has sort of just who's taken sort of A2H courses. You just follow my journey because you're my sister friend,
Right.
right? But if you could perhaps talk to the folks about, is there anything within the A2H formula in particular that gels for you or stands out for you, particularly around how people can use contribution to derive their success, or how maybe embodying the characteristics that are in the elements A2H can drive success?
Well, you asked me to share two of the elements that like resonated with me, and the truth is that all of them
Mm.
resonate with me. Um,
Yay, thank you.
I had to focus on the passion and unapologetic ambition because of my story and the
Mm,
trajectory of the story. But I also talked about passion,
right.
needing to have passion, innovation, and problem solving.
Yes.
That is what helped me to excel in so many areas. And it's just a gift. It's not,
Mm,
it's like I'm able to go into rooms or businesses or organizations and be like, no, we should be doing this. No, we should fix this. You need to be talking to this person. It's just a natural thing.
yes.
And I believe I got it from my mother, who's a social worker. And I just would hear
Mm,
her on the phone for hours and hours working things out for people. And
mm,
she was relentless. And if she couldn't work it out, it was not uncommon for a family to be staying at my house overnight or 2 nights until my mom could work it out.
yes.
So I learned that by, watching my mom. But then as you talked about self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get really good with myself because there
Mm,
was so much judgment. There was so much speculation
yes.
around who's this girl? Why does she think she can come in here and sit at this table? All of that.
Right.
And in the economic development space, I was not only usually the only woman in the boardroom, I was also the only person of color, many, many
Wow.
times. And when I tell you, I would walk into rooms and it would turn ice
Oof.
cold. And I would have to
Mm,
learn to, I said this in a speech one time, are you a thermostat or a thermometer? Because a
mm,
thermometer adapts to the temperature in the room, but a
yes.
thermostat regulates the temperature in the room. So
You
I
better
choose to
preach.
be a thermostat. So you can be
Mm,
cold, you can be judgmental. I'm going to come in there because I know I'm supposed to be here. Because
yes.
nobody's word is higher than God's, and He's the only one that made it so that I could be here. So there are so many of all of them. Tolerance for ambiguity. That is a
Okay.
huge one for me, especially in my former position where it was a pilot program. I was the
Okay.
inaugural director. I had
Mm-hmm.
no team. And they were like, this is what you have to do. This is the time you have to do it. That's all we got.
Right.
And boom. And I was like, wait.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But
No blueprint.
no blueprint,
No. No
nothing. But
historical information.
no, just make it happen. Tamika, you said you could do it. But I
Mm,
learned that I thrive in those situations, in that
yes.
chaos, because I'm a thermostat,
Mm,
because I also am like unapologetic now. It took me some
yes.
time to get here about the fact that I'm supposed to be here,
Yes.
that I can figure things out. And again, it was from watching my mom. She always was able to figure things out,
Right.
so I was able to do that. But then, encompassing all of the elements, and then also, to your point, acting on them, your
Yes.
contribution to your community, to your organization, your job, your family,
Mm-hmm.
grounded in the elements of A2H is what, it is a recipe for success.
Mm,
There's no way that you cannot be successful if you embody these elements and you're intentional in your contribution to your community and to your
exactly.
organization.
Exactly. Thank you so much for basically co-signing what I write about so often, what I speak about, but what I try to also live out. And so it was really important for me to find other people who live in those same ways,
Mhm.
whether or not they identify them as A2H elements, but you live out these kinds of characteristics. You already had unapologetic ambition, Tamika. I think
Right.
when we met, you were, and that was, many years ago.
Yes.
But I think we follow these laws of attraction in even in our personal lives, right?
Mhm.
So we were, I think, pulled together through forces that were beyond us,
Yeah.
in many ways. And I think that's because I had a sense that you were a strong person. You knew where you were going. And over the years that our friendship has blossomed, and the more that I have gotten to know you, I have really, for the sake of the audience, I've been following, I think, Tamika's journey more than she even realizes. Just because I'm a stalker on social media, first of all. And I'm just always somebody that celebrates wins for other people.
Yeah.
So when I have seen Tamika make those shifts from Job Corps to economic development to stepping out on her own to create a consulting firm, I was like, girl, I'm always in the back, like, you better go. You
Yes.
better.
Me too.
I am always that person. And so, with all that, I say thank you, first of all, for the ways in which you contribute. I want to move to talk a little bit more about that because I want to ask you sort of a two-part question.
Okay.
The first part is you are also highly intelligent. You could not do all of those things without that level of intelligence, right? So I would like to hear you talk about the ways that you go get the information that you need for yourself, so that you can build the life that you want to see. Do you mind talking a little bit about what that looks like for you in order to help you contribute at the level that you want to contribute?
Yes. I just had this conversation with my son, who's 19 years old and
Oh,
finding
wow.
himself in the same situation I was in at 19. I
Mm.
thought I was going to be Beyonce when I was younger, and I got a
And she could be.
I got a consistent deal. I was in the studio with, nationally recognized producers and everything, but I knew that I was not going to make it out of the music industry alive, whether it's physically,
Mm.
emotionally, or spiritually. And even though I had it in my hand, I walked away from it. And I had already left school, and I decided I'm not going back to school just to go back to school. I don't know what I want to do.
Okay.
And my son is in that same position right now, partly because of COVID, partly because we put a lot of eggs in the basketball basket and that didn't work out.
Okay.
And so I was just having this conversation with him that, you know, um, do not attach shame to the position that you're in right now, because this
Mm.
is where you saturate yourself in information. So
Yes.
if you have a manager, you ask to sit in on meetings.
Mm.
You tell them that you can fill in for them. You do for them. When I worked at the University of Pennsylvania in the Office of General Counsel, when I was putting pleadings and briefs together, I wasn't just putting them together. I was reading them,
Soaking it up.
soaking it all up, sitting in meetings with my boss and watching how she moved, looking at the language that she used,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, like, I'm always going to be early and I'm always going to stay late, right? Because
Mm.
I'm not going to give you any ammunition to say that I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
And so for me, it was just about not just showing up for a job, but always seeing more and knowing that there are people higher up than me that I could learn from. Even if
Awesome.
the relationship wasn't awesome, right? There were times where I had bosses that I didn't necessarily like,
Okay.
but they were very successful. And so I
Mm-hmm.
watched how they moved. And
Mm.
and I would always immerse myself, and not just my job. I started out as like executive assistants and administrative assistants, but for like the Office of General Counsel, for attorneys, for director of construction and all of that. And so I would learn
Right.
everything. And that's what really helped me to always, ascend, because again, I didn't have
Mm.
that paper. And
Right.
so, I went to real life university.
Okay.
I had a
I
lot of
love it.
I had a lot of different jobs where I learned a lot of different skills. And so my cumulative experience and now my
Yes.
skill set uniquely positions me to do
Mm.
very, very well in high
Yes.
positions. But it took hard work. And I'm saying that to my son. That's not a piece of it that you can ever dismiss. There's no
Right.
substitute for hard work. And there were days where I was like, this is not even in my job description, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm
Okay.
going to show them my value. I want to show
Yes.
them that you can't just like get rid of Tamika. But it took
Right.
years. It took years of that. But I mean, look now.
Right.
So it was all worth it.
That's wonderful to hear. First of all, it's wonderful to hear that you're pouring into your son that way and not. And I'm just going to share a little bit about my own personal experience. I can't speak to your full parenting story, but I know for me, I try to communicate, probably over communicate with my little ones who are not even little. I don't know why I still say little ones.
Little one.
Right, right. But I try to communicate with my children what career decisions I am making and why, and how they benefit or may challenge us as a
Mhm.
unit. And that's because as a child, I used to watch my mother and my father. My father has worked for one of the number one pharmaceutical companies for my entire life. He retired from there, but you would never know it because he didn't speak on it.
Mhm.
For him, it was just like, this is my check. It's
Right.
going to be my pension when I'm finished, right? And my mother had many, many jobs over time and landed in a career in education, in special education. But she did not speak to me about the career decisions. She did not speak to me about her experiences as a Black woman
Yeah.
in public education, which I know came with trials and tribulations.
Yes.
And so I come home sometimes, and now I don't spill and vent and give out the tea with my kids.
Mhm.
However, I do talk with them when I reach a crossroads where I know my next step is going to impact everybody in here, not
Yeah.
just me. So I commend you for speaking to your son about making those decisions for himself,
Yeah.
because we have to model for them what we know they need in the world. And I
Mhm.
say that not to say we want to model for them what we want for them, because I know for me, and probably also for you, you want your children to be who they see and who
Yeah.
God has for them to be.
Yeah.
So I can't even determine that, but I
Right.
want to model for them how to show up, how to contribute. So I'm gonna stop getting on my soapbox about that.
Good. Yeah.
um,
All
but
good.
what I wanted to also connect with what you said, Tamika, was first of all, you talked about being aware. So self awareness, another, obviously the element of success. That's number one. You talked about watching and learning from people who you worked for directly, but
Mhm.
also other people's jobs to
Mhm.
understand not just the needs of Tamika, but the needs of the organization,
Mhm.
right? And how Tamika was filling those needs.
Mhm.
One of the things I talk about with students, especially, but really with everybody I service with the Elements A2H, I try to help people understand what it means to manage up and out,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's part of that. So it's part of having an awareness about what are the needs of other people around me. And
Mhm.
when I talk about the element of problem solving and innovation, I don't just stop by saying, be a problem solver.
Right.
Well, really, what does that look like, Miss Stephanie? They
Right.
always want to write no more. I give them examples of knowing what your boss's job is only going to make you a stronger employee.
That's
But
right.
I listened to you say how you paid attention to what the way your boss might have moved, or your directors, people you worked with, because what you also learn from that, Tamika, in my experience, is you learn where they have opportunities.
Mhm.
And if you pick up on what their opportunities are and you can fill those gaps, they're going to see you as an asset,
Yep.
right? You move so far away from being a liability and become an asset. And they're like, what can we do to keep you, Tamika? We don't want you to leave,
And
right?
that's
That's
exactly it. Yep. Yeah.
exactly, you move into those conversations. And that's where I try to get young people to go, young professionals, to move in a way where you define your own success. But you
Mhm.
also sort of, people used to tell me, oh, when you got out of school, you're gonna write your own ticket, girl. That's not how it worked. I
Mhm.
came out with 2 degrees,
Right.
and I can't write my own ticket with those 2 degrees, because now those degrees don't even mean what they meant when I went into the that line of work.
Yeah.
Writing my own ticket really looks like having self-awareness, being
Yeah.
that problem solver, and all those things that you just described. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your personal story, because after all, this is Aspire to Higher personal
Mhm.
and professional development.
Mhm. I just want to say one thing. I just feel like someone needs to hear this. I
Thank you.
became an effective leader by serving leaders.
Mm,
All of my beginning positions, I was serving people in leadership capacities. And instead of me feeling like I don't want to do this for them, I don't, they make more money than me.
mm,
I did it with honor, and I did it with intention. And I was
yes.
very serious about I'm going to learn them so well that they're not even going to have to ask me to do stuff. So very often, my boss
Yes.
would say, "I need." Oh, it's already on your desk. Oh, can you call? Oh, I
Do
called
it.
him yesterday. He'll be here at noon. Because
Yes.
I already know. So if you're in a position of service,
Mm,
embrace that. Make that your stepping stone to what's next. Don't be
right.
disgruntled. And listen, people in leadership sometimes, don't have a lot of respect for the people serving them. Right.
Mm,
And I'm not saying to stay in a position where you're not being honored, but just know that those hard times are only going to make you better. And
mm,
and serving leaders, whether they're effective leaders or not so effective leaders, I learned what works as a leader, and I
right.
also learned what absolutely doesn't work as a leader. And
Right.
so that's why I really believe that I'm an effective leader, and my teams respect me and are really grateful for me because I honor them as human beings first and foremost.
Yes.
And because I sat in the position where I had to serve a leader, and I want them to feel how I wanted to feel in that
Right.
position of service.
Mm. Now that was a word. Thank you for sharing that, Jim. It's
Yes.
definitely something that I'm glad it hits your spirit because it is absolutely um, completely relevant to, I think, the people who are going to be listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
One of the last things I'll say before we have a little bit of fun going into our lightning round.
Yes.
Um,
At this
the
point.
la- yeah, listen, it's gonna be okay, Tamika. It's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna do you wrong. Um, so here's what I'll wrap up this sort of conversation about the formula with. This is not what I really want everybody to walk away from, not just this podcast with, but any engagement with the elements A2H or with Aspire to Hire. It's not rocket science. It doesn't require, tremendous level of education, but it does require internal fortitude,
Mhm.
right? It does require that level of reflection. You have to, I live with reflection as a practice, like in my day to day.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Tamika also can attest to just spending some time every day, number one, with God, whatever that that spiritual grounding thing is for you. Spend some time with God and think about what your needs are in order to be able to show up and serve and
Yeah.
contribute.
Yeah.
I just think it's really important for me to connect with people that I'm not just selling this set of characteristics. It's about using those characteristics to make your decisions so that you can contribute at the best level that you possibly can. Because I really think that's what it's all about.
Agreed. Agreed.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tamika. So without further ado, we are in our last few minutes of the show. And so this is I like to move into these last, I think, about 4 to 5 minutes of something I call the lightning round. So for my for the listeners and for the viewers, what this is going to look like is almost like a word association game. So I'm going to ask Tamika a set of questions, but I'm going to ask them in a quick sort of rapid fire style. It's not going to be as reflective as the interview has gone so far. I would
Mhm.
like for Tamika to think about the first thing that comes to mind. As long as it is clean, please share. Right?
I was like, "Are you sure you want to play this game with me?"
But no, listen, it's so important for a little bit about what I do, Tamika, especially as a DEI person. We show
Yeah,
up as who we are in our places of work. So I
that's
want you to answer as your full self, okay?
right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So now I don't have all the sound machine stuff that I want to have, but are you ready? We're gonna get into it. Can you hear my let's go. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna switch up the background just a bit to let you know where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Lightning round. First question, Tamika. Success is?
How you define it?
Yes. Oh, perfect answer. Second question. Name two role models or people you look up to. Go.
My mom and my aunt Terry.
Oh, beautiful. I wish I could ask you more, but this is the lightning round.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. How do you handle haters or naysayers?
Oh, I pray for them. I don't hate on
Oh,
them.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
You better be the Tabitha Brown of economic development.
yeah.
I pray for your healing. Okay, next question, Tamika. What grinds your gears? Work related.
and like a pot, just knowing that there are people waiting for me. There are people waiting for my service and
Mm,
my dedication. So I like I said earlier, I'm always grounded in who I'm serving. And in this capacity, I'm serving, business owners, entrepreneurs. And so when I know that they need me, there,
right.
there's no stopping me.
They get you turned on. You show up, you show out.
Absolutely.
Last question. What is the worst career advice you ever received?
That I had to go to college to be successful.
Mm. Okay, so that was a little bit of a setup because I feel like I knew you were going to say that. So that was a good position for me to a good place to position that question because I'm here to, I think, show everyone to illustrate, not just through my own actions, but through the actions, stories, um, and careers of my guests. And
Hmm.
so, Miss Tamika Otis, Miss Equity Warrior, Miss Atmosphere Shifting Storyteller. Now, I didn't let Tamika get into too much of that atmosphere shifting because listen, Tamika, I'm gonna be honest with you, before you came on, I got my tissues because I was like, I don't know what Tamika gonna say. And just in case you was gonna really take us there and shift it, I said, I need to be prepared.
Yes.
Because Tamika is known to bring you to the place where you need to be to shift your atmosphere. So I just want to give you, before I close, I
Hmm.
want to give you just a couple of minutes to tell the people about Kabod Consulting, where you do help people to shift, pivot, and practice the best lives for themselves. I know I'm not giving it the justice that you can, so please talk about Kabod Consulting.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So, just a little context about Kabod. I started Kabod in 2016 in response to my community's desperate need for culturally competent grant writers. I was
Mm,
doing a lot of pro bono grant work, and a friend and colleague of mine, Ricky Brown, said to me, this is a business. Like, it's nice that you're doing it for free, but sis. And so I
good
started
friend. That's a good friend.
Yes, I started doing grant writing. It was very, very successful at it. And then, my positions were very demanding. So I just had some clients here and there. And then in 2020, during COVID, when everything shut down, my
Hmm.
best friend, our mutual best friend, Miss Summer Willow Fitch, and I
Yes.
decided, like, we had talked about doing some things together. And she said, why don't we just build Kabod? Why don't we just make it more? And
Mm,
so all of her amazing experience and her degree in entrepreneurship and having an MBA and just
right.
her just diverse skill set coupled with mine, we were able to grow and expand Kabod to from just grant writing to doing organizational change management, doing organizational training, especially around DEI topics, trauma
Right.
informed care, personal and leadership development. And then we also do something called entrepreneurial alignment support because she and I are both serial entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
She has, the university degrees behind that, plus her experience, and I have all my years of experience. And
Yes.
so together we're very powerful in helping people to come in with an idea and very quickly start up their business and be successful, or have a business that isn't doing so well, and with a short period of time getting them to where they want to be. So that's what we do with Kabod. We're growing. We're going to be adding some consultants coming up. Stephanie Reed's going to be one of them. But did I say that out loud? And
I told you she'll shift the atmosphere because listen.
uh, yeah, and so I'm a hybrid entrepreneur. I have a best friend that believes in my vision and dream enough that she is only doing Kabod.
Right.
And so I hold that very, very heavy in wanting to make sure that our company is successful, not just because I want it to be successful, but this is my best friend and I want her to be financially stable and feel really good about the work that we're doing. But then
Yes.
also the jobs that I have really add value to the work that we do because of the connections and the networking and,
Absolutely.
and being in organizations and seeing when there's change happening and how people respond and what I should be doing. And I'm able to bring that over to Kabod. Um, and then we also do speaking engagements. She and I love to host events and
Hmm.
serve as facilitators. You can find out more at kabodconsults.com, right there.
Right. Down there, over there with
Yeah,
Tamika.
yeah. And so we're growing. We just finished a large contract with the YWCA of Syracuse and Onondaga County. Um,
Wow.
and we're doing really great work, and it feels good because we built it and we
Absolutely.
get to define it, and it is mission grounded. And I was really intentional about the name for kebab. People ask me all the time. First of all, a lot of people say kebab, and I'm like, it's not a skewer. It's not kebab. It's
No, sir.
kebab.
No, sir. No, ma'am.
No, it's kabod. Uh,
Absolutely.
and kabod in the Hebrew literally means the weight of God's glory. I was
Mm,
really intentional about that name because I wanted everything that I did to have the weight of God's glory and for Him to be
mm.
pleased with my work. And so if I
Wow.
name my company that, that is my commitment and my promise to God that
Mm,
everything that I do is going to have the weight of His glory on
mm. Listen, did y'all hear that?
it.
If y'all don't go to kabadconsults.com, because if the weight of the glory of God is on that word,
Okay.
listen,
Then,
can I have some? Listen, I just want to say yes to everything Tamika just said. And I think I'll take it a step further and say I know Tamika says she wants the work to be great, but the work is great, right?
yeah.
The work is great because of the intentionality in how it was put together. It is obviously carrying in the glory of God. How can
Mhm.
you not show up as great?
Yeah.
But as you heard Tamika describe, which I can't help but just connect right back to why we're here.
Yeah.
Tamika and Summer, as consultants, are helping people to align their personal and their professional, right? So, if you want to be part of that in the near future, there is a 3 day goal alignment coming up, I think this month, Tamika. Is that right?
Next month, the top of next month, the third, the sixth, and the eighth, I believe. But when you go
Okay.
to Kabod Consult, it'll pop right up when you go there. Yeah, and we believe that nothing is one dimensional. We
Right.
cannot address leadership development without first addressing personal development. And so many
Absolutely.
times people have a one dimensional view of things. So we're very holistic and very
Yes.
unconventional in our ways. But our outcomes prove that this is the way to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we can gush. I know I can gush on and on about one, Miss Tamika Otis, and two, Kabod Consults. But I don't want to hold us too long. I really would like the viewers who are watching to follow Tamika Otis on social, but also follow Kabod Consults. You can find them on social at that same name.
Mhm.
And thank you all. Thank you, Tamika, for being here to share your story, your very, I think, important and inspiring story to my listeners and to the viewers of the A2H podcast. Thank you for giving light to the A2H formula and how the elements of success can be embodied by all, right?
Yeah.
It is not about a person or a group of people who graduated from any one particular place. This is a life skill that I would like people to learn, embodying these elements and bringing your personal and your professional self to the best place. So, thank
Yeah.
you for contributing to that, Tamika.
Yeah.
And with that, I would like to say to my folks, if you have not already, please like, share, and comment in this show. Subscribe to the A2H podcast. And also, if you want to dig a little bit deeper, go to aspiretohire.com. You can subscribe to the A2H community. If you want to take a step further and become a member and learn about how to embody the elements of success from me directly, you can become a premium subscriber or sign up for any of the courses that we offer. Thank you, Tamika, for being
Thank
here
you.
and for shining in the way that you do.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And as always, I want everyone to do what? Aspire to higher. Thank you. Good night, y'all.